I know that the tens of thousands of people I've helped, because those people I've helped all have employees. Mm-hmm. And so my commitment and my passion is to change lives, help people learn how to identify and then be inspired to pursue their personal, professional, and financial goals, whatever they define. Wealth is defined by individuals and how they define what they want that picture in their life to look like. It's not me to judge that.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, everybody. It's Brad Blazer, the host of Beast Nation. I've been called a lot of things over the years, but today I'm being called the Robin Hood of knowledge because I'm bringing some great knowledge and information from a phenomenal thought leader as our guest today. It's the wonderful and it's the amazing Brandon Dawson. Brandon, welcome to Beast Nation. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. I know that you're a very busy professional. You know, a lot of people, of course, know you, and then, of course, there's a lot that don't. So I think the best way to get started would really to kind of just share your backstory, share a little bit about, you know, kind of your background, kind of how you got started as an entrepreneur, because it's an amazing story, and I want our listeners to know you better. Yeah, well,
you know, I can go all the way back, but I think I'll just say this. At 27, I decided to start my own business. I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I used to dream as a kid about being in a tall building in New York. I came from Corvallis, Oregon, where I was picking up walnuts, playing football in a small school, and just trying to graduate because I was a 2.4 GPA. I hated school, but I loved the idea of working, and I had this big mental picture. So when I was 27, I decided to step out. I saw an opportunity. I was a inside sales director for a company in Minneapolis. I was making great money, and I saw a lot of my clients that were basically just shutting their businesses down to retire. And I thought, why isn't anybody buying these businesses? So I left that business. I went out, negotiated to buy a little piece of somebody's business, and I parlayed that into a company I took public at 29 years old on the U.S. Stock Exchange, the American Stock Exchange. It was private equity backed, and I was on a race to acquire as many businesses, about 120 businesses, and then I realized I couldn't operate them. And so, you know, as a public company acquiring so many businesses, and then the cycle of operationalizing them caught up. And back in the late 90s, there just wasn't a lot of internet technology choices. It was old school mainframe. So we had a lot of integration issues. And then I figured all that out and just started taking off in 2001 and launched a franchise affiliate program. And that went from $0 to $1.5 million a month of pure profit. And I was on top of the world. My private equity group called me at the peak of my career. Private equity group called me and said, we want you to come to New York. And they said, we're selling the portfolio you're in. It was right before 9/11. So then 9/11 hit, and it just threw everything out of yaw. And then in February, they're like, we're just going to sell the company off. And I was like, you can't. We fought for 7 years. We're ready to crush it. And they were like, yeah, but, you know, we're selling everything. Yeah. And basically they sold the company for half of what it was worth. And I learned a really hard lesson about using other people's money, especially private equity, to pursue your dreams. And it frosted me significantly. And one of my mentors, when we were playing golf about a year later, I see a thing up on the monitor. About a year later, one of my mentors said, Brandon, you got to stop talking about what you lost. You got to stop talking about the past. You got to get focused on the future. Sure. And his name was Hector Lamarck, and he said that the total sum of every moment is your future. So whatever you're thinking about, whatever you're talking about, whatever you're doing right now will take you to your future destination. So if you're unhappy with anything in your life right now, you need to identify what you did to cause that. You need to ask yourself, what would I do different next time? And then you need to go do it again because there's no other choice. And you have to have a bigger mental picture of exactly what you want. So I reformulated that. He introduced me to Beyond Positive Thinking by Dr. Robert Anthony. I rechecked my thinking. I recalibrated my strategy, created my own strategy that everyone said wouldn't work, launched it in 2004, and organically grew it, generating 50 million of profits, never raising a penny, never borrowing a dime, just sticking to what I knew would work, not replicating the things I did wrong. built the business up. In 2016, I sold it for 150 million, 77 times EBITDA, which was a unbelievably smashing value. And the buyer was $1 billion company, public, and everyone said they were crazy. And after buying us, we integrated so fast. Their market cap now is 3.8 billion.
Wow.
And so it's just a huge success. And I'm taking everything I've learned in that process and I've packaged it all up into little bite-sized consumables and joined Grant Cardone, and I'm bringing it out to thousands of business owners, helping them grow and scale their business.
I love it. You know, it's funny that you started your career as an entrepreneur very early in life. We have somewhat similar backgrounds. At 23, I actually dropped out of college. I was studying architecture. I wanted to become a real estate developer. Went to work in the oil and gas industry for 2 small companies based in Austin, Texas, learn how to raise capital, learn how to close. Unfortunately, the second company, let's just say their ethics weren't aligned with mine, uncovered some fraud, and so I left and resigned. And my investor base backed me. And so at 23, not knowing anything about running a company, I launched an oil company. And of course, I learned, you know, on what I call that journey of being an entrepreneur. You get a good accountant, you get a good attorney, you put your power team together. We built that up to a multi-million-dollar oil company over a decade. And then, of course, 2 things happened. Oil prices plummeted, tax laws changed, and I did what a lot of entrepreneurs had to do. I pivoted, looked at myself, and realized I had great sales skills. I knew how to close. And so in my career, I raised over $2 billion for a number of companies where I've actually closed the largest transactions for multiple. 11 million for the second largest insurance company in the world, Allianz, 9 million, 7.5, you know, $5 million transactions where the commissions alone are 6 figures. And so it's a similar background. But one thing that I always hear from a lot of, quote, younger people is that, you know, there's too much risk, or I don't have the knowledge of starting a business. And so they never do. What was it that allowed you to kind of make that leap of faith to actually become an entrepreneur at such a young age? Was it confidence? Was it just, you know, hey, it's the right time? Because so many people don't have the ability to move forward. And obviously you and I both did, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think people get too comfortable. So, you know, I had a very fortunate thing happen to me when I moved from Portland, Oregon. I dropped out of my first 4 months of college. I hated school. I packed all my stuff up. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia from Portland, Oregon. And I traveled the 11 states and called on doctors selling devices to them as an outside sales rep. I didn't know anybody. I had a company car. I didn't even have a house. I lived out of my car, depending on what town on a Friday night I'd end up with. And I learned to grow up. And in the process of doing that, because of some things my boss was doing in Atlanta, he called me to come off the road, and I did, and he said he had to fire me. So he fired me because he was doing some things that I found out about, and he got uncomfortable that I knew it. So he created these conditions to fire me, and I felt like it was very unfair. He took my car away, so they dropped me off at home, and here I am in Atlanta with no family, no friends, because I hadn't spent any time in Atlanta. I was going all over the 11 states. And at that moment, I think I was 19 or 20. I had to make a decision. And the decision was, do I retreat and go home? Do I call my parents and cry, who were pissed off at me? My mother was livid that I dropped out of college and didn't even tell her I moved to Atlanta for 6 months. So I thought that probably wasn't a good choice. And you know what I did? I walked into a local bank and got them to give me a $1,000 loan, even though, you know, back then the branch manager signed for me. No one would do that today, but I talked her into it because I said, I don't have any other choices and I need enough money to get an apartment. And so I went over and I rented. I had enough money for a couple months of rent, and I prepaid for it. I became a roommate with somebody that had a 2-bedroom place. And I literally went down to the pool hall, and I was a good pool player, but I wasn't great. And I had a gentleman, his name was Slim. He was a one-legged Army vet who was a hustler. And so Slim spent 10 hours a day for a couple weeks showing me how to play pool, how to process play so that you can, you know, make some money. And between hustle and pool in the evenings at, you know, $10 a rack 9-ball and $10 a rack 6-ball, or race to 3 for 20. And then selling card space for a friend's business to businesses around universities for getting 50% of the cash I could collect. I actually started making more money than I ever made working at my job. And all of a sudden I realized I've got all this freedom. Like I don't have to answer to my parents. I don't need to have a boss. I can make my own money. I can do my own thing. And I learned that at 19 or 20. So fast forward, having a job, making 150, 180 grand a year, running a sales team of 25 people in Minneapolis, with a 2.5-year-old and a 1-week-old, I made the decision that I actually had this thing inside of me that said, you're making too much money and you're getting too comfortable and you're going to end up being an employee your whole life with kids and a new house I built. So I sold the house. I went to my wife and said, we're going to move back to Oregon, rent a little tiny home that's cheap. We're going to sell our gorgeous home and I'm going to become an entrepreneur. I saw this opportunity and I'm going to take advantage of it. And bless her soul, she said, okay. She was a Minnesota girl, a great, great lady. And so we moved to Oregon and I spent 6 months. I had saved 6 months worth of capital so I could go negotiate a deal. I didn't have any money. And that moved me on. Now you asked me what it was inside of me. It was the courage.
No.
And the innate, desperate desire to pursue this big dream that I had when I used to sit in the walnut orchard mowing it, dreaming about going to New York one day or doing deals in a tall building. It was having that thing and then realize I'm not going towards that. Yeah. And then having the courage to not risk my future ambition or future goals at all cost. And then having a spouse who has said, if that's what you want to do, let's do it. And we made that move. And it wasn't easy. It was a grind. There was a lot of crying. There was a lot of fear. You know this. Yeah. A lot of ups and downs.
Oh, yeah.
But it's the willingness, the commitment to fight through that allowed me to just keep going. And the more I would succeed on the little things, you know, being told 110 times no for my first million and being laughed out of places and being told I'm a dumbass for even thinking somebody would give a 26, 27-year-old $1 million, like weathering all that, despite all that. And then when somebody said yes, the moment the person said yes and wrote me that check for $1 million, my whole life changed because I realized I can do frickin' anything.
Absolutely.
And then I got ahead of myself, tried to bear the weight of everything on my own shoulders, trying to keep it together and just couldn't do it well, lost that business despite figuring it all out. And then just went from there and said, I'm all in. And that's exactly what it was, the courage to do it and not losing that big vision I wanted for my life.
Yeah. I mean,
so many people concede. Yeah.
So much there that I want to unpack. You said something earlier in our conversation that I really want to focus on because I've actually trademarked what it is we do in our coaching. We've actually trademarked a concept of philosophy called the art of beliefology. And standing behind that is the theory that if you change your beliefs, you change your habits and dramatically transform your future. You know, your life you're living now doesn't have to be the same life you're living next year. But really what I think it comes down to is beliefs. It's like you said, it's the belief up here between your two ears, the brain that believes you're capable of doing something or having the courage to do something. And it really, like you said, when somebody wrote you that first check for $1 million, I mean, boom, you know, your confidence level, I'm sure, went up tremendously. It was like when I started raising money for my oil company, and the very first investor said, great, Brad, how much are 3 units in your program? I said, go get your checkbook at $75,000. That for me, of course, just immediately said, hey, you're going to be successful. You're going to be able to do this. And then it was teaching other salespeople how to get on the phone, how to educate people on the opportunity, how to ask for the business and how to close, et cetera. And of course, out of that, you know, we built a very profitable multi-million-dollar oil company. The thing, though, that I would say is that you not only were successful building your first company, so we're very successful building your second. What were some of the lessons you learned in the first that you either carried forward that helped you become successful in the second one, or what were some of the things in the first you learned that you did not want to apply as you built your second one?
Yeah, well, like you said, belief. So I'm very close to John Maxwell. He was a mentor before he met me, and now he's a dear, dear friend and a mentor. You know, in 21 irrefutable laws, the first law is law of the lid. And so I created similar to you, I created an operating methodology that has 3 lids: belief lid, operational effectiveness lid, leadership lid, first me, then we. And I created a whole enterprise operating system around that, because the thing that my catalyst was when the pressure was on, it's easy to lower your belief. And of course, all activity follows belief. If you believe low, you achieve low. Right. If you believe super high and you stretch in the increments, Michael Phelps, when he shattered the world record, did he give up, or did he now have to try to figure out how to beat himself? When Tiger Woods was on this amazing winning streak and he decided I needed to change my swing to go to another, get to another level, and he changed his swing. So professional athletes, just like business owners need to do, you hit your increments. And so if you stop stretching, and that's the whole point of Grant Cardone's 10X rule, wherever you're at, think 10 times bigger, because now everything's even that much harder, right? So now you're solving little problems versus if you just think a little bit, it's a big problem. Yep. To the extent that your effectiveness in what you're pursuing increases your belief, you gain confidence. The more confidence, the more you'll elevate your belief, because you see it just like the first million. Boom. Oh, I did it. Now my belief goes, I can go to 10 million. Oh, I did it. Now I can go. And the delta, what you talk, see, I can always tell when I meet somebody who's actually built businesses, because you describe the exact process from a concept to action to result, you know, and if a lot of people try to act like they built a business, but they can't connect those dots. So in my mind, that first million was my operational effectiveness. I, out of 108 presentations, kept getting better until I presented in a way I could attract attention. I realized but to get to 10 million and raise 10 million, or the next 6 million, I needed to even incrementally improve my communication, my technical skill set. I needed to be able to talk about numbers. I needed to be able to not just paint the vision, but back into the economics of a single business, so that they could see I understood. So the more effective you get, and to grow through that effectiveness, you got to stretch your personal leadership skills. Then what you just said in the process is, then when you do that and you're an example to it, and you know the things that you do that work, you need to then teach somebody else. Exactly. And you need to elevate their belief. So everything you described in your trademark process is the same process. It's just we got there, we call it something different, but you can always tell when you meet somebody who's done it, right? Yeah. What I learned, number one thing, is what you think is what you say is what you do becomes your legacy. So whatever you're spending your energy thinking about is ultimately what you're going to create. So good, bad, or indifferent. And if you're not thinking about exactly where you want to go and concentrating on the exact elements that are going to get you there, you're never going to get there. You're going to get wherever you go. It's called drifting. It's in three, Outwitting the Devil with Sharon Lechter from Napoleon Hill, his personal memoirs. Yep. So people spend most of their life drifting. So let's look at the numbers. 31 million businesses, 25 million of those businesses have one employee, which is the owner. 5.3 million of those businesses have between 2 and 15, and 600,000 have over 15, and 2/3 of all the businesses fail after 5 years. Well, you look at the stats and you say, okay, obviously everyone is thinking too small. They can't get beyond themselves. And then the 3 reasons they say they fail is, number one, there's no demand for what they're offering. Like, who's going to start a business if they don't believe there's any demand? And then the second reason is they're undercapitalized. Yep. And then the third reason is that they can't find good people. Yep. Now, Grant Cardone says the business has failed because they never learned to sell. Now, I want to apply that to those 3 reasons. Those 3 reasons are excuses, because everyone would concede you'd have to be a moron to start something there was no demand for. So you can't really say there's no demand for your business. Secondly, you're going to be undercapitalized. If you can't create demand for your product, there isn't another moron who's going to give you money. There's no bank, there's no investor, because you don't know how to articulate what you're trying to do. And then the third thing, what employee is going to pursue their personal, professional, and financial goals behind somebody who can't even illustrate the demand for their product? So if you can't sell and you're not brave enough to do that, then the what you do doesn't matter. Who you do it with and how you do it. And that was my conclusion, is what I was doing didn't matter. Who I did it with, how I did it, all mattered. And I think that's what I learned through that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you and I are very similar in our approach. I actually call it something a little different. It's RDR, and I apply that. It's really, companies can very easily, recruit and attract people. And you put an ad on LinkedIn, you put an ad on Indeed. There's some out there looking for work today. biggest problem I think most organizations have is retention. You mean you got revolving doors at companies all over the United States. I think the statistics are that the average employee stays with the company for about 18 months looking for another job. And of course, 67% of most employees are actually disengaged. The big problem I really is in the middle. It's the D, it's the development. Most companies don't invest the time. They don't have the skills. They don't have the right people to train and develop their people. And so it gets back to what you and I said. Once you understand what worked for the person that wrote you the first million, for the investor that wrote me my first few checks, it's then being able to replicate yourself. It's being able to bring people in, teach them how to close, teach them how to talk to high net worth accredited investors, and then just keep replicating that process. And you said something earlier that I truly believe, and that is that so many people are right, and that's the difference I believe between living what I call an extraordinary life and leading an ordinary life. As long as you've got a car, as long as you've got a roof over your head, as long as you're able to put food on the table, you're complacent. Let's face it, you and I both know it takes a shitload of effort and a lot of sacrifice in an extraordinary life. And most people are just not willing to put in the effort or put in the work. And I think so many people look at successful people, and it's almost like when you look at work, they see the nice house, they see you fly a jet, they see the nice homes, but what they don't see is what's under the water. All of the grit, all of the late nights, the fear, right? Everything that we know as entrepreneurs allows us to get where ultimately we want to be. So what would you share with all of the people that are listening in Beast Nation that, are complacent, that are kind of, quote, happy where they are, to inspire them that, they need to turn on, they really need to, realize that, hey, man, I'm just being honest with myself. I'm not working at 100% of my capacity. I call it unleashing the beast, or becoming a savage, pursuing your goals and dreams. Because I look back to a study that Harvard University did many years ago, where they took a large audience of a few thousand people, and they asked the group, how many of you have goals? And only 17% of the group raised their hand. That means 83% had absolutely no goals. They had dreams and things that they wanted to accomplish, but they had no goals. And then they asked the audience, how many of you have actually taken the time to write those goals down on paper? 3% out of a few thousand people. And then they followed that same group, Brandon, for a couple of years. They went back and they said, Brandon, how much money did you make? What do you have in the bank? George, what do you make? And what they found, and this is what I love, is that 3% out-earned the other 97% 10x.
Yeah, that
not
doesn't
3
surprise
times,
me.
Not even 6, 10 times the net worth in just 3% for simply writing down their goals. And I tell people, because background architecture, it's like an architect thinks of this concept for a great building. He makes a little sketch on a sketch pad. He might not see that damn sketch for months or years. He puts it in a drawer somewhere, and then someday later he sees it. He's able to go to a drafting table, create a set of blueprints. You have those blueprints to a contractor who can now actually construct a real building. And what you've taken is a conceptual idea. You've created something that's now real. And I think there's a lot of people out there that misunderstand the importance of clearly goals, because goals without action are nothing but dreams. And once you have a goal and you understand the steps you need to take along the way, great things happen. But you earlier, and I strongly believe this, that most people don't reach a level of success in life that they're capable of because of complacency. Can you unpack that a little bit for me?
Well, it's interesting. So my daughter, my 14-year-old, she asked me if we could go for a ride in my 488 convertible, because the weather was gorgeous and I hadn't seen her for 3 weeks because I was traveling. And she said one of her friends, or a couple of her friends, were kind of giving her some grief because on my Instagram I posted, heading to Missouri to Vail to Portland, round trip in a day. And she said that they were saying to her, that her daddy's rich and stuff like that. And my daughter said that she looked at those girls and she said, I haven't seen my dad in 3 weeks. He has worked this hard since he was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And, I think you got to decide what you want. Look, My dad and my stepmom got to spend the last 5 years, 7 years of their life, she passed away last year, traveling the country because I made enough money, I could retire them.
Yeah.
My kids get to go to great schools. My oldest daughter has 3 grandkids. She gets to live on 10 acres in Bend, Oregon with her little hobby farm with a remarkable husband who works his ass off, but I get to help them.
Yeah.
So the thing for me is, I have thousands upon thousands of lives in the United States and outside this country. I can go anywhere in the world with my family and I do not need a hotel. I will have a beautiful place to sleep. I will have amazing food on the table and I will have people showing me around because I've created depth and changed so many people's lives that I've worked so hard for in my lifetime. Thousands and thousands of people, helping them hit their personal, professional, and financial goals. And that's what inspires me. The money that comes with that success, that's a byproduct of the contribution. It's the tax on the contribution that I give to somebody else's life. And I'm not going to ever apologize for it. I'm not going to apologize for the things I have, because I know that the tens of thousands of people I've helped, because those people I've helped all have employees. And so my commitment and my passion is to change lives, help people learn how to identify and then be inspired to pursue their personal, professional, and financial goals, whatever they define. Wealth is defined by individuals and how they define what they want that picture in their life to look like. It's not me to judge that. If my wealth is $1 billion or $10 billion, it's not somebody else's job to judge that. But to your point, here's the reason why that 3% were able to succeed and why the 97%, the drifters, all poke holes in it, because there's a psychological effect here. And this is what business owners need to understand when you go out to get guidance and advice from accountants or lawyers. You said it earlier, when you get a good lawyer and you get a good accountant. Well, most of these people don't have good lawyers, don't have good accountants, and none of them can advise them on how to grow and scale their business because lawyers and accountants normally stay small.
Right.
So the point here is this. You have to fortify and protect your dream. You've got to write it down because actualization comes after visualization. And in the process of creation, you have to visualize it, you have to actualize it, and then you create it. And then you gain momentum to do more. But the rest of the people around you while you're doing that are going to try to claw you back to normalcy, because the psychological impact is, if I say you can do it, I see you do it, you actually do it, then I got to reconcile with myself, what is it about me that isn't courageous enough, smart enough, intelligent enough, committed enough? What is it about me that I can't do it? So what normalcy does is try to claw that 67% of disconnected and overtly sabotaging businesses out of the Gallup poll that you mentioned. 67% of the people, it's because they're clawing everything back, because God forbid they have to look in the mirror and say, that person did it, which means I am unwilling or non-committed to doing it. And that's, everyone needs to understand, when you get into those increments, that is really what you're dealing with, and not the whole art of what you and I do every day is not giving a shit about that. But focusing on where you're going, the impact you're going to create, and the commitment you have for you, your family, the people you love, and the people you serve. And if you're committed to that above and beyond everything else, then the rest of the stuff going on is nothing more than noise from people that are trying to bring you to mediocrity so they can justify and rationalize their inability or non-commitment to do something themselves. Period.
Hallelujah, brother. And it's so funny. I mean, I love you for saying that, because my good friend, who I know you and Grant both know, Coach Michael Burke, says that successful people have learned not to listen to their feelings. He said the biggest fear most people have is not starting the business. It's not doing something big in life. It's the judgment of other people. It's exactly what you said. It's all of the naysayers, all of the people that tell you you can't do it, or you're not going to be successful, or you're foolish to do that. And it really comes back exactly what you just said. And what I've learned by being around a lot of very successful people, Tim Story, Coach Burt, and so many others, is that we blocked out our feelings don't listen to the noise. We don't listen to the bullshit. We're so focused on the goal, knowing what we want, and we're so committed to that journey, relentlessly pursuing it every day, every waking hour, that there's really no distractions. We're just going forward. And, you know, I love the saying, money follows motion. If you're constantly in motion, in pursuit of your goal, you're going to get knocked down. There's going to be distraction. There's going to be things that pull you off course, but it's the relentless pursuit daily in ultimately, you know, what it is you want, what you're trying to achieve. And it's really funny, when I started on this journey, I obviously had a career. I was doing my coaching and my writing on the side, and I was making a lot of money, and I had a path. I either could go this way or I could go this way. And so I sat down with my wife and my daughter one night after dinner, and I said, we have to have a meeting. And I sat them down and I said, I want to tell you something. I was in the oil business and I made a lot of money. I was very successful. I mean, imagine 25 years driving the car of your dreams. You're living in a gated golf course community. You know, you're raising millions of dollars a month. Most of the attorneys and CPAs I went in were like amazed that here's a 27-year-old kid making this kind of money. It was Jordan Belfort, Wall Street. And I was up here. And then, of course, I was almost like getting a gut punch when I had to make the decision and tell my first wife I'm dissolving the company. I never had to go bankrupt. I closed the doors the right way. At the same time, it's like, well, what do? You're making all this money. Now you find that I took about 1.5 years off because I had plenty of. But I said to my second wife and my daughter, I said, there's a big difference between living an extraordinary life and leading an ordinary life, and I'm ordinary. And sacrifices. And I looked at my daughter, I said, there will be nights that daddy's not home, he can't come to your dance recital. There will be nights that I'm spending nights in hotels, on the road, doing what it is I need to do. And it's because I love you much, and I want you to have the things I know you want in life, but more importantly is I want to be capable of giving them to you. And it gets back to kind of what you said earlier. A lot of people are kind of just like corks in the ocean. You know, they're living, as I say, a defensive life, reacting to shit, rather than waking up every day on the offensive. And I tell the people that I coach, what successful people do is they don't use the weekends as a vacation. Most people look forward to Friday so they can party all weekend, right? Chicken wings, beer, let's go to the pool. Most successful people use the weekends to do what? Recover, re-energize, and then hopefully spend some time on Sunday planning for success the next week. Who do I need to connect with? What big events am I planning? What am I going to do Monday morning so that when they show up, they're on the offensive, right? They're moving forward. They're not like this little cork that's living life on the defensive. And so there's a lot of value, I think, in what you shared. One thing I do want to touch upon is really how people that are business owners and entrepreneurs, because we have a lot of people that are in that category, can really connect with you and Grant and get involved in Cardone Ventures. If they want to scale, they want to know what Cardone Ventures really will assist them with. So can you kind of maybe just very quickly unpack what it is Cardone Ventures does, so people that would have an interest in growing and scaling their company can better understand by connecting with you as a result of this podcast?
Yeah, so we've, you know, Grant believes in scale. So he doesn't want me. What I was going to do is launch a venture fund and partner with businesses that didn't want to go the private equity route, because I've got tens of millions of dollars of IP I've built that I've set up in a different company, my own operating structure, my own operating technology, everything to map. And so I built that outside the business I sold because I knew I was going to go to hundreds of different industries. And so I brought that to Grant. What people do is they can pay to come to programs, and I'll teach them, which I've got, you know, thousands of businesses that are cycling through that right now. And you know, you can come for free. You can pay $199 a month, or you can, you know, hire me for $150,000. Like and I have a team of 30 people here that have all worked with me for a long time. So we know exactly what we're doing across all functions of the business, and we have the technology to map. For those businesses that hire us to do what we call platforming, where we break down all the elements of the business, we rebuild the business, and we show them where all the leverage is. When we deliver that platform to them, they can hire us as a management company to manage the 5 functions of the business: marketing, operations, finance, human resources, and what you just said earlier, that's a huge miss for everybody because they don't know how to do it: professional development. What things are the most important impacts in the business? How do you develop for duplication? And how do you measure the impact and the incremental improvements, and then running out all the financial analysis with budgets and key performance indicators and budget to actual and forecasts and doing all the professional stuff a big company would do that all these little companies don't know how to do. So they can hire us to do that. Now, for businesses where we see an unbelievable opportunity for expansive growth, bigger, better, faster, we'll offer to partner with them. We get a management fee plus a percentage of the upside. So we have a business called AMI, Alternative Medical Group, and Integrated Medical Practices. They joined us and partnered with us. It's about a $20 million business. And we've already brought in, as a group, we've got about 50 of their businesses in the platforming process. But we've been able to demonstrate to 400 clients that we've brought in now in less than a year through the system that we can create a $3.5 to $5 billion enterprise if we cooperatively come together at 250 business owners, only 250. And so we're already got our pool of people coming through that looking at it already are 400. And so we're going to take that business and grow it to billions because it's changing healthcare, and especially with what's happening right now with coronavirus. So when you understand how to get to 10 billion or 5 billion and you understand the linkage down to 1 million, you said it earlier, it's just following the leader and doing the right things.
Yep.
So Cardone Ventures, you can engage us from coming to our boot camps. We have the 10X boot camps. We obviously have 10X Growth Con each year. Mm-hmm. So you go to our boot camps, you go to our business boot camps, cover all elements, sales, marketing, operations, leadership. And then you can just keep going deeper. You can do sales training with Cardone training, or you can work with Cardone Ventures, do that, and do all the business building stuff, the people building stuff, and then tap into all of our services where we'll guide and assist and come alongside you, either a pay to play or under a partnership arrangement. So that's what Cardone Ventures is. That's how we operate, and we love watching people succeed. That's the number one thing is we benchmark success. What you talked about, writing your goals down, putting a strategy to get there, and executing at a lightning speed, because all the elements that you have to figure out when you're in business for yourself that you don't know what you're doing and you don't understand what it looks like, just eliminating, I call them break points. You have break points between 0 and 3 million, 3 to 8 million, 8 to 15, 15 to 25. And it's all different technical stuff that has to happen. And when all of a sudden you have smooth sailing and you don't have to do any of that, and you know which technologies to tap into, how to integrate them into the business, what you're looking at, what your strategy is, how to develop your people, how to find the right people, how to keep them. That's a big issue. And we have a whole, in our technology, we have what I've created is the PPF, Personal Professional Financial Goal Planning. Look, people don't go to work for you to pursue the thing you're passionate about. They go to work for you to try to pursue something they're passionate about. The biggest mistake business owners make is think everybody should give a shit about what they give a shit about. Mm-hmm. The art of building a business fast is getting hundreds of people, or thousands of people, or 10,000s of people that give a shit about what they want to accomplish, doing the very thing that you have them doing that you're passionate about. And if you don't bridge that, then you're always going to have that churn. When I sold my business, 60% of my leadership had been with me since the first year of the business. I groomed them into vice presidents and president's position. When I sold the business, I dispersed to every employee, 192 employees, I dispersed $15 million. My executive vice president and my president got $9.5 million. First job he ever had and didn't have an employment contract. Wow. So when you talk about keeping your people, and they're all still there running it now into a $3.5 billion company with the next iteration of opportunity. Yeah. Kind Candy Bar, the health bar? Yeah. In 2009 and 10, they weren't managing their forecasting right, so they had to do an emergency round of financing. So they raised $15 million with a private equity group who said, keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. 6 years later, they bought that position back for $215 million. Wow. Now, for me, I would rather bring in talent and say, I'd rather give you part of the 200 million. Sure. And I'd rather give part of it to my customers. When I sold my business, I sent $37 million to my customers that were with me, that never left me. I had customers, 80% of my foundation customers, my first 100, never left working with me. They got, of the 37 or 38 million, they got $25 million. I had customers that got checks for $950,000 that were bigger than the size of their business when they started working with me. That's great. Give the money to the people who help you create it. Don't give it to the financial guys. There's a whole different way to build if you know how to do it. And that's what I bring, not only for the business owners I work with, but teaching them how to deploy that to their teams So they don't have the churn you discussed earlier, and they have highly engaged, highly active, highly committed, and highly aligned team members.
Yep, and I mean, that's exactly the premise of my second book, Put Some Thrive in Your Hive, How to Unlock the Potential in Any Organization. That's the key message, and I know it, I believe it, and it's something I preach because most people that are in business, there's a big disconnect in what managers, leaders, entrepreneurs believe, of course, their people want, and obviously, of course, what the people that are, rank and file employees want. This has been wonderful, Brandon. I want to thank you so much. We're kind of running out of time here. Great information, folks. Brandon Dawson, of course, Cardone Ventures, a serial entrepreneur, obviously very, very successful. Look him up, check him out. It's been a wonderful, wonderful day. Any closing thoughts as we wrap up, Brandon, before you go?
Yeah, I just want to tell you, it's always fun to do a podcast with someone that you know, like you and I have never met before.
Yep.
It's fun to do a podcast with someone that you know knows. Like people that are listening to your show need to know, from one entrepreneur who's done some pretty remarkable things to another entrepreneur who's got his own show, is when you speak, and you know this, what's amazing to you and I is how many people don't want to dive in. Say, you asked me earlier about your show, what I would say to them. I'd say the people listening to your show aren't the people that don't want to succeed. They're the people that want to succeed. Yeah. So here's the validation. Keep listening to his show and listen to what he's telling you, because I can tell from one entrepreneur to another, he knows exactly what he's talking about.
I appreciate that so much, because, it's funny. I always tell people it's very important who you ask advice from. If the guy that you're trying to ask advice from has never built a multi-million-dollar company, that ain't the dude to be talking to. So Spot on, 100%.
100%, man. Thanks for having me on your show.